Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Maryland Pork Producers Summer Learning Series. Today we have Dr. Pepin from the National Pork Board with us to go over everything Swine Health 101. Dr. Pepin earned his doctorate of veterinary medicine from the Iowa State University and joined the National Pork Board as a director of swine health in 2024 after serving as the director of veterinary medicine at Cytotherix Inc. There, he oversaw health, production, and ongoing disease surveillance and monitoring for the swine herd. At the Pork Board, Dr. Pepin currently works on projects including the PRRS Virus Advisory Group and the RFID Project, which provides funding for RFID readers to processing plants, sorting stations, and exhibition grounds. So, Dr. Pepin, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you for the introduction. And thank you for inviting me to be here today to talk about Swine Health 101. So jumping right into it. So the basics of swine health really come down to three main things: air, feed, and water. If you can't provide your pigs these three aspects in a clean way, you're going to struggle with health all the way through. So the very basics, make sure that you have clean air for your pigs, you have good quality feed, and that your water is also clean and of good quality, and your pigs will already be off to a good start health-wise. The next stage of swine health really begins with the barn, and this is both inside and outside the barn or whatever unit building your pigs are housed in. Want to make sure that your feed bins or your feed storage, however you store your food, if your feed comes in bags and that's how you store it, you want to make sure that it's in a dry location, preferably up off the ground, making it so it doesn't get wet, because if wet feed gets wet, it can get moldy, and moldy feed can really make your pigs sick. So you want to make sure it's stored in a clean, dry place, and also preferably in a way that rodents can't get into it. So if you have a feed spill, clean up that feed spill as soon as you can to help decrease the chances that rodents are going to get in there. Which brings us to the next point of rodent control. Rodents and pests can carry a lot of diseases that you don't want your pigs exposed to. So it's a really good idea to make sure you have good rodent control around your building and even inside your building when appropriate. And then that also goes into weeds and lawn care, because if you have long weeds or grass on the edge of your building, that's a perfect place for rodents to hide in, and especially mice and rats. They love having that long grass alongside the buildings that they can hide and run around in. So keeping those weeds and grass trimmed down around your building will really help reduce your pressure of rodents and pests into your pig and where your pigs are being housed. And again, air quality is very important, especially moisture in the air. If the air is too humid inside the building, that's going to make it harder for the pigs to breathe and also make them more likely to get sick. So making sure you have good air quality where your pigs are housed, and making sure that humidity in the barn doesn't get too high. Temperature, and making sure it's not too hot or too cold for your pigs, especially for young pigs. They're very susceptible to both of those extremes. And then pigs themselves cannot sweat. And since they can't sweat, it's really hard for them to monitor their body temps when it gets too hot. So you want to make sure that it's not too hot or too cold in the barns. And that depends on the pig's age as they grow as well, but making sure it's appropriate for them so they're not struggling to stay warm or struggling to cool off. And then, of course, no good barn talk will be good without talking about biosecurity. So biosecurity are steps that you're going to take to try to keep disease out of your barn, or bringing diseases into your barn or where your pigs are housed. And a good rule of thumb on the very basics is making sure that you have specific footwear dedicated to your pigs that you only wear around your pigs on your farm, different from the shoes or boots that you'd wear in the town. You want specific dedicated boots to your pigs, and dedicated clothing to your pigs is also a good thing to consider. So just making sure that you're not going to bring any diseases into those pigs that might be on your clothes, your boots, from being outside. So pigs, just like people, do get sick. It's our job as caretakers to try to keep them as healthy and disease-free as we can. And we do that through three primary things: biosecurity, which we just kind of touched on in a very broad sense, also the use of vaccines, and also providing treatments when appropriate. Pigs do get sick. So how do we find disease? When you're in your pigs, looking at them every day, we monitor them for what we call clinical signs. So these are kind of the five broad clinical signs that you'll see in pigs, starting with what we call respiratory signs, and that really is pigs coughing and sneezing. So respiratory refers to anything that's in the lungs or the chest. And then fever. So normal pig body temp is approximately between 101.5 to 103.5. If that pig's body temp is higher than that, that means they have a fever, which usually means that they're sick with something or trying to get over something. So fever is one of the things we monitor them for. Pigs that have a really high fever are probably going to be what we call lethargic or just lazy, laying around, not wanting to get up because they feel really crummy. Kind of like you do or humans do when you have a high fever. You don't really want to get up. You want to lay down and just kind of chill out. Enteric, which is a term that essentially means intestines or gut stuff. So any gut or digestive problems the pig has would be an enteric clinical sign. Common one would be diarrhea, or what's also referred to as scours, especially in younger pigs. Pigs not eating or pigs vomiting. Those would all be what we call enteric clinical signs. And then lameness, which is referring to pigs having trouble walking, would be pigs limping on any one of their feet, or what we call toe touching, where they won't want to put pressure on one foot for too long. So they kind of stand there, kind of alternating on their back feet. That's a sign that one of their feet is sore. Or it also could be just pigs having a hard time getting up. Those are all signs of lameness. And then skin, which can include blotchy skin, could be skin discoloration. Some diseases will cause the ears to tips to turn purple. There's also some diseases out there that will cause diamond lesions to show up on the pigs across the pig's body. So skin, just making sure skin is another clinical sign that we kind of monitor for. So common diseases that we see, especially in show pigs, well, in pigs in general, but in show pigs we worry about respiratory-wise include PRRS, which stands for Porcine Reproductive Respiratory Syndrome Virus. That's a mouthful. That's why usually we just say PRRS. And then also influenza, which a lot of people refer to just as the flu, but the official technical name is influenza. Both of those in growing pigs will cause respiratory signs, so a lot of coughing, a lot of having the pig be a hard time breathing. They also will both cause high fevers as well. And then enteric signs enteric diseases, that we will see in pigs include PED, rotavirus, and E. coli. All three of these will cause scours or diarrhea in your pig, so really loose, watery stool. Rotavirus and E. coli typically affect younger pigs. PED can affect pigs of all ages, and PED can also cause vomiting as well. And then another one that I really want to point out, especially in exhibition pigs, that's not really a disease, but it is something that causes common clinical signs, is heat stress. And like I said before, pigs can't sweat. And so it's really easy for them to get overheated and really easy for them to feel the stresses of heat, which is why we have to do a good job, make sure that if they're in a hot environment, we provide fans to help cool them off, misters that kind of make artificial sweat on them essentially. And then if you see a pig showing signs of heat stress, typically they're breathing very rapidly. They're not wanting to move very much. They might be sitting or just lying down, not wanting to get up and just not wanting to move. Another good sign too is pigs are very social. So if you have multiple pigs housed in one pen, when they're sleeping, typically they like to be sleeping touching each other, not piling on each other, but just like touching each other. And if they're hot, they're not going to want to do that. They'll be trying to spread out as far as they can, not touching the other pig. And if they're doing that while they're just normally sleeping, that's a sign that it's probably a little too warm in their room or their barn. So vaccines. Vaccines help keep your herd healthy and protect it from diseases that could get your pigs sick. And sick pigs are going to grow a lot slower. They will not look their best at exhibition. And if you're trying to breed your pigs, they may not get pregnant or they may not farrow. So this is why we want to make sure we vaccinate, try to keep our pigs healthy, and try to prevent them from getting these common diseases. And the exact plan really needs to be tailored specifically to your farm. And to do that, you really have to work with a veterinarian who's seen your farm, knows what disease challenges you have, what you could have, what you've had in the past, to really get a vaccine plan that's going to work best for you and your pigs. Your vaccine plan for your farm may look different from a big vaccine plan for your neighbor's farm or your friend's farm, because you guys probably have different disease challenges you're dealing with. So just some very basic vaccine recommendations, uh, especially for now this here is just growing pigs. So typically growing pigs, you mean pigs that are already weaned off a mom that you're raising, in this case, raising for exhibition. One that you almost certainly want to include in your vaccine plan is PCV2 myco, also called circomyco. So that is for the porcine circovirus type 2 and for a disease called Mycoplasma pneumoniae. So circomyco, PCV2 myco. Typically, you want 2 doses starting, which can be given starting at day 3 of age, or can start at 3 weeks of age. And there are some products out there that are labeled to give 1 dose, but in my experience, 2 doses is always better, always gives more protection than 1 dose with this vaccine. And then some of the commercial examples of this would include Fostera, Gold, PCVMH, Circumvent, or 3-Flex are all examples of commercial vaccines that have these two vaccines in it. Other two that are highly recommended that again you'd want to talk to your vet to figure out which one, if these are going to be appropriate, but it would be highly recommended to be the PERS vaccine, also called MLV vaccine, which stands for Modified Live. And typically that's given 1 dose at 3 weeks of age or older. Examples of that include Fostera, Engelvac, Primepack. There are a few other ones out there. Other highly recommended vaccine to be for flu or for influenza. And that typically is given as 2 doses, 3 weeks apart, or sorry, excuse me, 2 doses at 3 weeks of age or older, and each dose is approximately 2 to 3 weeks apart. An example, a commercial example of that is FluSure XP. And then for gilts, and here gilts, again, are female pigs that have not had a litter yet. So if you're keeping a gilt back that you're going to want to breed later, on top of also giving that circomyco vaccine, the other 2 vaccines you really want to strongly consider giving them would be the parvoleptoerysipelas vaccine, which is also occasionally called a pre-breeding shot. And that's usually 2 doses given before the first time you breed that animal. And the commercial example of that is a product called FerroSure. It's probably the most common one you hear. Another vaccine that you really want to make sure you give these gilts is after they do get pregnant and you know they're going to give birth or going to farrow, is you want to include an E. coli Clostridium vaccine that may or may not have rotavirus in it. And that again is giving 2 doses to them after they've been bred, but before they farrow or give birth. An example of that product that's commercially available is Pro Systems RCE or LitterGuard. And then again, highly recommended vaccines if you have a herd of gilts or multiple gilts that you're going to be breeding. Would be definitely consider using a PERS MLD vaccine within your herd. You could give that again by the recommendation of your vet, what's going to be appropriate for your herd, but that can be given 1 to 4 times a year as a whole herd shot. Meaning you go in and you vaccinate everybody, all your breeding animals all at once, so they all have the same protection at the same time. And then also, again, influenza or the flu vaccine is also something strongly to consider as well. And again, that you want to give them 2 doses. And sometimes that can also be combined with the pre-breeding shots. You don't have to give that as 2 separate shots. You can give it as 1 shot with the parvoleptoerysipelas and the flu all together as 1 shot. And then for your sows, so if you have sows that you're keeping, and sows again are female pigs that had at least 1 litter before. So assuming that your gilts got that first round of vaccines that we just talked about on the last slide, you'll probably give them to them again, but this time they only need 1 dose typically. And again, you want to work with the veterinarian what's going to be best for your farm, but going off the label of the vaccine, they need 1 dose pre-breeding. So before they get rebred to have their next litter of the parvoleptoerysipelas, or again, what's commonly called the pre-breeding shot. And then again, 1 dose of that pre-farrow shot, which typically includes E. coli, Clostridium, and plus or minus a rotavirus. And again, the examples of that would be Pro System RCE or LitterGuard. And again, repeating myself here, but highly recommended vaccines for your herd if you're breeding a herd in general, is including a PERS vaccine in there, 1 to 4 times a year as a whole herd shot. And the frequency you use that's really going to depend on the PERS pressure that you have. And then also flu or influenza shot or vaccine. And if they received that 2 doses previously as a gilt, usually just need 1 dose to kind of re-up their immunity status to help keep them from getting very extremely sick from that. Other vaccines that are commonly used in pigs, especially growing pigs, that's really going to depend on your herd and the challenges that specifically that your pigs face, are going to include ileitis. Another term for that is garden hose gut, uh, or bloody scours, as other people call it as well. Another other one is salmonella vaccine, Glassurella parasuis, which used to be Haemophilus parasuis, but they just changed the name. There's a commercial vaccine for that. And then a lot of other vaccines out there as well that you really want to talk to your veterinarian to figure out if it's going to be helpful to your farm. And if that is a previous challenge you had in your pigs on your farm, that's probably want to look into vaccinating specifically for those challenges as well. A dewormer is another common product used in pigs, especially in show pigs. And the use and frequency is really going to depend on the pig's environment. If your pigs are being raised on dirt or have a lot of access to outside, then you're more likely that you're going to want to be using dewormer. Pigs that are not raised on dirt, they typically have less pressure where they don't need dewormer as often. And again, your frequency and how much you're going to use is you really want to have your vet involved in that conversation, figure out how best to use a dewormer product. But methods that are available to provide dewormer include injectable, and that's usually most convenient for small herds because dosing in the water and the feed in a small herd can be a lot more work and just easier to go inject them. And there's also a couple topical products that are out there now, but I didn't include it on the slide. But there are a couple topical dewormer products that are also available. But the three main ones are injectable, water, and feed. Most of these are safe to use in pigs at a young age. The recommended timings when you typically use a dewormer are usually around breeding, around farrowing, and then also during the growing stage. And again, this is really going to depend on the environment your pigs are raised in and just the amount of pressure that they've had in the past from worms. So in summary, how to keep your pigs healthy. You should really best if you establish what's called a veterinary client-patient relationship, or a VCPR. And essentially what that means is you have a vet that is familiar with your farm, that can come out and see your pigs. So if you do have an issue, you can call them and they know what your farm looks like and the previous challenges that you had. And then talking with your veterinarian, get the recommended vaccines for your pigs to combat the diseases and challenges that you face normally or that you know could be a challenge in the future. Also, control pests and wildlife around your pigs. Pests, wildlife, especially rodents and birds, can all carry diseases we want to keep safe from our pigs. So we want to make sure we're doing things we can to reduce that risk. And then clean and disinfect pens and equipment regularly. Good rule of thumb is if you empty a pen or a barn, disinfect it right away, especially before you get new pigs put in there. Then also do not share equipment with others. This includes your show box. I know it's nice to be able to share, help your friends, but you don't want to share equipment with somebody else's pigs because you don't know what diseases they have on their farm that may be different from what you have on your farm, and you might just be swapping germs back and forth. So don't share your pig equipment with other people. Monitor your pigs for illness and health challenges. Again, monitoring for those clinical signs, and if you do see them, work with the veterinarian to figure out what the appropriate treatment is going to be. And then, as best you can, when you can get your animals home from a show, isolate them. Keep them separate from the rest of the pigs on your site. I know that's depending on people's setups, that's harder to do. Ideally, you have them in a different barn, a different location. But if you can't do that, at least having them in a separate pen or a separate area, and then make sure you chore those animals last, so you're not dragging disease that they may be carrying back to your healthy pigs or back to your pigs that weren't at that show. And then you keep them at isolation period. You just want to monitor them, make sure that they aren't getting sick, because they may have picked up something like influenza at the show, but they may not showing clinical signs till after they get back home. So that's why you want to keep them isolated to try to keep the rest of your herd from getting sick. Then also clean and disinfect your trailer before each use, and then communicate quickly about any illness you see in your pigs, whether it's to your veterinarian or to the show official if your pig gets sick at the show. And then respond appropriately based on the veterinary recommendations. So a resource I want to share that we have available at National Pork Board is called our Champions Guide to Biosecurity. And this will really go through best practices you can do to help make sure that you're not bringing disease back home into your pigs. And then when you're at the show, what you can do to make sure you're doing the best you can to make sure your pig doesn't get sick from the pigs around it. You can scan this QR code here, and then I'll bring you to the site to download the guide. You can also go to Pork Checkoff's website, and if you type in Champions Guide to Biosecurity, you'll be able to find it that way as well. And it's a free resource available for you for use. With that, I want to thank Jennifer again for letting me come on and talk to you guys. You can scan this QR code here if you'd like to see newsletters from National Pork Board periodically on just updates of things that are going on in the swine industry and that what Pork Board is working on. And then if you want to contact me for anything or with any questions, here is my email on here too. So bpepin@pork.org.